2, 1, go.
Good evening. Hello and welcome. My name is Jeanne Sparrow. I am your moderator for this evening. Thank you so much to Barbara's Bookstores for hosting us tonight. Got a couple of pieces of business before we get into our conversation with Katrina. If you want to ask her a question, we are going to be taking questions toward the end of the hour. So just click on the button that says ask a question. It doesn't look like a button, but just click on that, put your question in there. And if you see a question in there that you like, you can vote on it. And the ones that get the most votes will rise to the top because those are the things that people are most interested in. Also, the little green button right down below the screen, click on that to get your discount for the book if you have not purchased it yet. So, our esteemed guest today played for 12 years on the Women's Tennis Association Tour before eventually becoming the first Black person, the first woman, the first former player, and the youngest ever chair and president of the USTA, going on to serve an unprecedented 2 consecutive terms in that role. She is a native of Chicago, a graduate of Whitney Young High School, proud Northwestern Wildcat. She's also the executive director of the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program and has been named to both Forbes and Adweek's most powerful women's lists in sports. It is my honor and distinct pleasure to introduce Katrina M. Adams, new author of Own the Arena, Getting Ahead, Making a Difference, and Succeeding as the Only One. Hey, Kat.
Hey, Jeanne. Hello, everyone.
It is so good to see you. How does it feel, before we get into this whole conversation, how does it feel to have your book published and talking about it? You've been all over the place, Good Morning America, the Tennis Channel, everywhere talking about it, and on a billboard in Times Square.
Well, you know what, Jeanne? I'm not usually at a loss of words, but I've been speechless in the last week, particularly with the billboard, the GMA scene, and I'm just thrilled and honored to be a part of this evening. Thank you, Barbara's Bookstore, for hosting us, and thank you, Jeanne, for moderating. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, I am too. First, I want to know, how would you describe this book? Because I read the book in an afternoon, and it was engaging, and there was so many different things. And I think because of your focus on tennis throughout your career and all the connections in that theme, people might think it's just a memoir. But how would you describe it to somebody who didn't know you and had never heard of the book?
Well, it's definitely not just a tennis book. It's really a book of life lessons for me. Own the Arena can be any arena, whatever your arena might be, getting ahead, making a difference, and succeeding as the only one. And so I really try to bring people into my space, into my world, not only in tennis, but in my personal life, and carry you through of the life skills that I've learned through the sport that really help each of you in your own professions. In teaching you or giving you tools to own your arena in so many different ways, of which we'll talk about this evening. So it's a book for everyone, for gender, race, ethnicity, and every age group.
Yeah, and the challenges you face, I think, are the best lessons. But one of the themes that I really liked. Well, I also like all the behind the scenes stories, and I'm sure that those will get peppered in the next hour. Some of them made me scream. Some of them made me cry. Some of them made me laugh out loud, like hysterically, where I think I disturbed the neighbors. But leadership, it was a theme throughout the book, and how tennis in particular as a sport helped you to become a leader. And the thing that I found really interesting was, up until I read the book, I always thought about tennis as a singular sport, other than doubles and things like that. And when you made the reference to playing with an opponent and creating a match together, and the partnership you have when you do play doubles with the people on the other side of the court, that really struck a chord with me. Can you talk about how tennis in particular, and being an athlete in general, has been a theme for leadership in your life?
Yes, absolutely. Because this book is about leadership, and it's about becoming your own leader in whatever it is that you're doing. Tennis, yes, it is known as an individual sport because you have to be self-motivated. You have to have your own discipline. You learn how to build your self-esteem and your self-confidence through the sport and how you're learning, but you're always working with someone. You have a coach, you have a partner on the other side of the net that you're training with, that you have to work together with, and working at your strategies and your tactics and your patterns of how you're playing. If you're competing, you have a doubles partner that you're working with. So it is still a matter of working with a team or with someone. And these are all life skills that we can take into our professional lives, no matter what our profession ends up being. We pull on those tools from what we've learned through the sport of tennis to make us just as good as professionals in our respective fields.
Your brother just popped in into the chat. Now, some of the skills that you talked about, there were some keywords in there that spoke to me. And the idea, one of the ones that floated to the top for me, because it's one that we use a lot, but I think a lot of people have forgotten what it means. And it's not one that we often use when we talk about business settings, but you use it consistently throughout the book, and that's sportsmanship. And the idea that you can be competing, you can disagree, you can come from completely different sides of the net, but still be a good human being about it. So talk to me about sportsmanship, and then how that collaboration and delegation, resilience, persistence, endurance, all of those things feed into that microcosm.
So tennis is a sport that was built on sportsmanship. It's a sport that you call your own lines. You have to be, you have to be honest. It's where your integrity really comes out and it shows who you are. And in calling your lines fair, or trusting your opponent's line calls. And I think, in business, it's about the integrity that we bring to the table. Yes, we all want to cut corners and try to bully our way into getting deals done. But at the end of the day, you're going to respect the person more because of their integrity, their trust, and of how they went about bringing that deal to the table, and really, combating more so than if someone is really trying to undercut you, that's cheating, that's just not being truthful. And that's no way of really doing business. And one of the things I've been very fortunate of in the capacities that I've had and the hats that I've worn is that I've always worked with people that had the highest level of integrity, and that's why I've been able to be successful in the arenas that I've been in.
Yeah, and one of the stories you tell, I think, illustrates it in a really clear way when you talk about the 2018 finals between Serena and Naomi. One of the parts that you teased out from an insider-outsider's perspective, like you weren't involved in the two of them having it, but you were involved because you were there and you were part of that whole situation. But the one thing you talked about and you made very clear was that was part of the reason why Serena was so upset. When you talk about the integrity of who she is and having a call, somebody saying that she was cheating, she was like, no, you have to tell them I wasn't cheating. And the fact that that is such a theme through the sport, and it is what sparked that whole situation truly, and put people on kind of opposing sides across the country and around the world.
Yeah, so that situation with, this is a 2018 U.S. Open Women's Final, and so really the incident that happened where Serena Williams was penalized for a game, I didn't even see it because I was moving from my seat down to courtside to get ready for what appeared to be the end of the match. And it was really a situation for Serena where she got so caught up in being called a cheat that she kind of lost focus of everything else that was going on out there. And her temper just continued to rise because she was so concerned about clearing her intent of cheating. Although her coach said that he was definitely giving signals, but I'm a player. We either see our coach give signals or not. Just because you're looking up at your box, there's 15 other people in that U.S. Open box that you can be looking at. But it's still a situation of, at the end of me trying to really clarify and bring clarity as to, what these two young ladies had done for 2 straight weeks, 2 Black women of color, that was on the grandest stage of tennis, going toe to toe, Naomi Osaka playing her, her idol, and having the opportunity to beat her to win her first Grand Slam title. and trying to really bring light to that and bring it back to the forefront, moving away from what had happened on the court. And, things got a little out of, or taken out of context, misconstrued, if you will, from my words. And it was a lesson learned, I think, from me, but also from everyone else that was involved in trying to put their 2 cents in.
Yeah, I think it was instructive in a lot of ways for a lot of us, and it brought to the fore a lot of how we are seen as Black women, how people see the sport, what is tolerated from men but not women on the court, and the fines and all these different things. And one of the things you talk about, one of the people you talk about a lot in the book is Althea Gibson, and her breaking the color line and the color and gender line at the same time. And you have a quote in the book from her that says, "I hope that I have accomplished just one thing, that I have been a credit to tennis and my country." The thing I find striking about that quote is she neither mentions being Black or a woman, even though that is one of the things that she is remembered for finally after a lot of fighting. You talk about the fight to have her acknowledged in a real way by the USTA and the tennis world at large. But talk about that continuum from her through all of the Black women and women in general who have played tennis and made history, to yourself and to people like Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff. Can you talk about what that means to you and how you see that continuum?
Absolutely. I mean, Althea Gibson was a hero of mine, and I'm very proud and honored to have been at the forefront of bringing a statue of her to the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, which is the home of the US Open, which was erected in 2019. And so when you go back in time in the 1950s, from when Althea first really entered the professional scene, and she won Wimbledon twice, she won the US Nationals twice, the French Nationals, the Australian Nationals. I mean, this woman was number 1 in the world, traveling all over the world on pennies, really. But really never really got the recognition. One, because it wasn't in the Open era, which started in 1968, when those players were professionals, but also because she was of color and did not have as many doors open for her. And so she tried to move and navigate her way through the sport, almost being unseen, and not trying to bring too much light to her being of color. She was 6 feet tall. It was kind of hard not to see her. And so when you fast forward, there's still not enough Black women in the sport, in the professional sport of tennis, because I can pretty much name all of them from Althea until today. But there are a lot more than when I came on the scene. And I think each generation after Althea has wanted to do her proud and to represent and try to walk in her footsteps, but at the next level. And so if we come all the way fast forward to obviously Venus and Serena, to what they did and transcended the sport, to where so many of our younger Black girls now are playing, and boys are playing, because of what they've accomplished. And then you see a Coco Gauff come on the scene at the age of 15 and be so mature. And then Naomi Osaka, really speaking up for what's right, and taking a platform and using that platform is remarkable, because that's a platform that I'll be able to love to have been able to speak upon about the injustices that were done to her. And now Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff are definitely speaking those injustices, and it's coming full circle.
Yeah, and they're carrying it so far, even the way they do business. I mean, and looking at Serena, Venus, Naomi, and I'm sure Coco in the near future too, they've really leveraged what they've done as young women in this industry. Now,
and what I appreciate about that, Jeanne, is that that's kind of part of the chapter, or that I talk about owning your identity, and these young ladies are really owning their identity, not being shy about being Black and being women. And those are, lessons learned, or that you'll learn throughout the book.
Yeah, let's talk about those 12 match points, shall we? Let me find the list. So own the table, own your legacy, own your courage, identity, choices, network, village, voice successes, losses, obligations, and possibilities. Which one of those 12 match points for you personally was a challenge? Like, we all have those things that we go, okay, this is something I need to work on, and we do it, we get it, and we move on to the next thing. But there are those that we grapple with, that we struggle with, that we, are like this, and it seems like we do it our whole lives. What is that one match point for you that either is still a challenge or that has been a challenge to get to this point?
Well, I would say the one I just mentioned, owning your identity, or owning my identity. I've never been someone to be shy. I've always been, walking tall, and felt like every room I walked into, I owned it. But I'm not sure if I was really that confident in saying, why is it that I'm walking in to say that I own this room? I was always, more times than not, the only one. So I had to walk in with that confidence to say, yeah, I own this room. So I'm not going to let you put me down or bring me down, or I'm not going to allow myself to feel less than or smaller than in any situation. So I always walked taller than I probably felt in those situations, but it's something that I definitely learned to own as I navigated many boardrooms going forward. Owning your courage. I mean, you have to have the courage to really step up and speak up, and really not be afraid to walk out on a limb. Me playing in a professional sport of tennis was walking out on a limb, because not many before me that looked like me and really succeeded. So that was another area of that courage of stepping forward. Me leaving Northwestern to go and play professional tennis, that took courage, not knowing what was really out there on the other side. And then fast forward, going into the boardroom and sitting at the head of the table. That took a lot of courage to want to do that. And so there, every match point resonates with me in some form or fashion, but those are a couple that really stand out.
Yeah. And I think, and sometimes they're a lifetime of working on it. Like it's that, because one of the things I appreciated you doing in your book is being so transparent about how, okay, here is where I struggled with this. And then I got there and I was okay with it. And then I moved on to the next thing. And then I realized, oh, I got to work on this again to get to there. Talk to me about those transitions, because you've made a lot of them in your life and career. And a lot of growth happens in those transitions, and a lot of realizations. What have those transitions meant for you?
Well, each transition was a new chapter in my life, and a new ownership as to who I was and what those possibilities were, from going from professional tennis into a workspace. I started off being a national coach for the USTA, working with our next generation of young players that were jumping from juniors directly to the pros. And I'm proud to have had a hand in some of those development of those players that went on to succeed. But once I felt like I didn't want to be on the court anymore, I had to pause and really digress and go inward to say, what's next? And I'd studied communications at Northwestern. I always wanted to be a commentator or be a broadcaster on television. And so I jumped into that opportunity when it presented itself, and went to Tennis Channel before they'd even come on air. And basically told them that they needed me more than I needed them. Now, we all know that wasn't true. I really needed them. But they also really needed me, because it was a time when Venus and Serena were number 1 and 2 in the world. This is like 2002, 2003. And Serena was really about to just sweep everything and start her Serena slams. And they really needed someone of color to be there to talk about them and to bring their life to the screen and to the ears of people, someone that really understood them, because no one else really understood what they experienced growing up. And I grew up on the west side of Chicago. I understood that. So it's, that was definitely one challenge. And then, one transition. And then when I was going into the boardroom, when I joined the USCA, I joined as a committee member of one of the national committees, which took me to their national conference, their annual meeting. And that's where I really got to hear and listen and see all of these wonderful volunteers who were part of this amazing organization, and recognize that the USCA is really it really given me a great deal of opportunity because I played in USTA tournaments to get a USTA ranking, but I also played on USTA national teams that were sponsored by the USTA. So they afforded me the opportunity many summers to go and travel from national tournament to national tournament under their expense. And college, I played on the college team in the summertime. So as I learned more about their impact in grassroots, I realized that I really wanted to give back to an organization that gave me so much. And after getting on the board as an elite athlete, someone that's been retired for 10 years, I established myself as a director of large when that status expired. And that's when one against all the other business people in the country, and I realized that I actually had some worth and started to think differently inside the board.
And that is so key to everything. I think when it comes to success is knowing what your value is and what you are at the table for. And one of the things you bring up, which is a passion of mine that I talk about a lot, and I was so gratified and affirmed when I saw it, because I was like, yes, I'm not crazy. Is when you talk about diversity, you don't talk about diversity in terms of representation as much as you do about diversity of thought. The fact that who we are as individuals has led us to a particular place, and more importantly, not only do we need to be in the room just so you have people who look like us, but because we actually approach things from a different perspective. Can you talk about what diversity of thought means to you, especially in the way you talk about it in the book?
Yeah, diversity of thought is huge to me. And it's something that comes up in a lot of business conversations that I have, particularly when you're talking about putting a committee together or putting a board together. If you don't have diversity of thought from people of all walks of life, from every gender, every race, every ethnicity, every socioeconomic background, or to be able to come together and form really a strong business plan. How are you gonna bring your consumers in? How are you able to talk to everyone? And there are some products that could care less about all of that because they're for a certain level of people. But the majority of the things that we do on a daily basis that really account to us, you have people that don't even know us that are making decisions for us. And so that's why, to me, it's so important to make sure there's diversity of thought in these conversations so that everyone can be represented. Or for those people that don't have a clue about a lot of these groups, can actually sit there and go, I was in a board meeting once as the only female. And I talk about it in the book, and we were having a discussion, and I give my explanation, or my reason, or my line of thinking. And one of the gentlemen reaches over and leans over and says, thank you for your wisdom. I never looked at it that way. And I leaned in and said, of course not. You're not a woman. And so
that part
was cracked up because it was like, duh. And I mean, and for me, I think it was really the first moment that I was like, I don't see how they don't get this. And I'm like, yeah, I do see how they don't get this. This is so simple. But that's why it's important to have diversity of thought on so many levels in many of our business conversations.
Yeah, you're getting some applause in the comments on that one, because I think we've all had those moments, no matter who we are and who we represent, which is another thing you talk about quite a bit in the book, is this idea. And I think so many of us as Black people, when we succeed, we feel this way. And I think it's a particularly Gen X thing, but I could be wrong about that part. I think many of us of any generation have felt this at some point, but it's about representing the race or being a representation of the race. This feeling you had of not only being the only one, but being the only one that these people see as a representation of everybody else that's behind. And the thing that I've also found interesting, and I've shared this with you personally before, and I hope you don't mind me doing it now, is that you don't seem at all in the book to see it as a tax. Like a lot of times people talk about the Black tax and the fact that, we have to work twice as hard to get the same recognition as somebody in the majority. But you seem to take on the mantle of that responsibility and obligation. You not only take it to heart, but you don't seem to resent it. Whereas I feel, and sometimes rightfully so, some of us do resent it. So can you talk a little bit more about that and how you talk about it in the book? Because I think the tone that you strike is an encouraging one.
Well, for me, I welcome the challenge to be put in that position, because I think if we work hard for something and we're prepared, then we shouldn't feel that we can't succeed. And I know when I took the helm at the USTA as the first Black, the youngest, the first professional tennis player, only the fourth woman, I had a lot of those things that were on my shoulders, if you will. And I had a lot of people that were pushing me forward and also lifting me up because of that, because they wanted to see me succeed. And so I knew I had a pool of people, hundreds of thousands or millions, that were supporting me because I had this title, knowing nothing about me, but knowing that I was Black and I was a Black woman. And so I felt that pressure going into the role. I understood the enormity of it, but I welcome the challenge. And I think it's knowing that, we've always been, people are looking for us to fail in these roles or in these positions. And so I knew that I could not fail. And so I had to do my best. I had to work as hard as I could to make sure that I looked good every time I showed up, to make sure that I spoke eloquently every time that I gave a speech, and to make sure that I recognized everyone that walked by, no matter who they were, what they looked like, and how old they were. I got that from my parents. But that was something that I made sure of, because people just want to be recognized, and people want someone to have an ear to listen to them. And so that's what I tried to do. It was very tiring, but anytime that you walk into a position like that, you have to understand the enormous weight that it puts on you. But if you really stand tall and know that you're there for a reason, that weight can be lifted if you're prepared and you can drive forward and accomplish anything.
I want to take a little bit of a tangent on here because I do want to talk about the people who support you, because you shout everybody out. Like, I loved reading names of people we know in common. I'm like, he got a shout out, she got a shout out, which was so awesome. But before we get to that, let's talk about the fact you said, I cannot be a failure. But one of the things you talk about in the book is how tennis in particular, the character of the game and learning how to lose and learning from your losses has informed how you lead. Talk to me about that, because that moved me, because as a newish entrepreneur, I feel like I fail every day at something, and learning how to fail and get back up and learning from the failure, I think is the key to success. Talk to me about what that means from the perspective of having gone through a lifetime of that, playing a game that is built around that concept.
So to me, failure only creates opportunities, because we learn from our losses. And if we allow ourselves to look at those losses as stepping stones to succeeding, then we're much better off. If we allow ourselves to go into those losses and only look at them as failure, and that you'll never do anything, you're not gonna ever get yourself out of that rut. So I look at as those failures as opportunities to step forward. Tennis, for sure, unless you're number one in the world or the top 5 in the world, even getting to that point, you've had a lot more losses than you've had wins, and you learn from the losses. When you win, you go out and say, I did that, and you don't even think about what you need to do for the next match. But when you lose, you're like, oh man, what can I do different? Why wasn't I able to execute here? How can I tactically change my strategy for the next match? So forth. So it's the same thing we do every day when we're trying to close a deal. If you don't get it, gosh, where did we fall short? How can we make this better in our next attempt? And I think that those are the things that, for me, tennis has allowed me to do. No one is ever gonna say, gosh, Kat is just hanging her head. I've never seen her hang her head this low. If you do see me like that, then something's really wrong, because that's just not who I am. And I do give it, part of it is a credit to my sport. Part of it is a credit to my parents who raised me to always keep my head high and move forward and keep trying.
It reminds me of that meme that was going around a while ago where there were two young men playing basketball, and you see the guy lifted, like the one guy missed a shot or something, and you see his teammate come and he hugs him and he lifts his chin at the same time. And you talk about this a lot in your book, about the village that you have that supports you. I know a good portion of your core village because we all went to school together, and they mean something special to me as well. What has your friends' support meant to you, and how have you developed your professional relationships into ones of professional and personal support? You talk about your board of directors, and I love that it is personal and professional, and it's all weaved together, and there doesn't feel like there's a separation between the two.
Yeah, they are intertwined, because many of the people in my village are also in my network. And so when I talk about my village, these are my family and my friends that have been there from day one, that have been there to lift me up, to support me, to give me ideas, to just kind of guide me along the way, or just to be there to put an arm around you when you need it. I talk about my three best friends from Northwestern, Wendy, Lori, and Lauren. And we go way back to before I was anything on a professional tour. Yeah, I was playing tennis in Northwestern, but we weren't friends, but we were not friends because of that. It was in spite of that. It was the camaraderie that we had of supporting each other at NU. That is, the minority numbers there. We all know what that is. So to be able to have those three friends right away from week one meant the world to me, and they're still with me and by my side today. I have my family that's been there for my village, but I also have that personal board. And the personal board are those friends, colleagues who have special expertise in areas of business that I may not have strength in. Someone that I can pick up the phone, send an email, a text, and say, hey, I'm really struggling and trying to figure this out, or I'm not sure if I'm going down the right lane or this direction. You got a minute. And so those are the people that you want to be able to lean on, that you can trust. They're there to support you, not to get anything out of you. And I call them my personal board, which ultimately becomes part of my network, because the network are those colleagues that you're working with, that you're all striving for the same goals, and that's just succeeding and helping one another succeed. And each individual needs to find who those people are. It's a small group, it's a small number that you're working with, but and in that network, it could be a mentor or someone who's sponsored you along the way to help you get to the next level. And those are many of the things that I also talk about.
Yeah, it's moving, and sometimes it happens by happenstance because somebody says, come here, let me tell you something. And then you realize the importance of it and it grows. But when you start thinking about it and crafting it, then it has so much power. And that's the feeling I got from the book, was that you appreciate it, you treasure it, and you cultivate it, and you cultivate it in others. And that feeling and that inspiration really touched my heart. Another thing that I found really touching was how transparent you were about your personal journey as a woman. In the chapter Baby Woman, which just made me laugh. So first, tell everybody what baby woman means, but then also talk about the idea of sacrifice as a choice and the challenges you went through personally, not only physically with health issues, but also just identity-wise as a woman. Who am I as a woman athlete?
Yeah, so baby woman is a term that my godmother really gave me, and my mom. Everyone called me a baby woman because when I was young, my mom always said, you have been here before. I don't know where you came from, but you have been here 2 or 3 times before, because I was so mature at such a young age. I was walking at like 6 months and running around at like 8 months. And interestingly enough, one of my godmothers called me the other day after reading the book, and she said, you know, you had a babysitter, your first babysitter could not keep up with you because you started walking and running so early that she wasn't able to keep up with you. And your mom had to get another babysitter who I had for the rest of my life until I was an adult, basically. But you know, those are just shows a level of maturity that I had at a very young age. And what was the next part?
The next part was about your personal challenges, because, and you talk about it from the sense of sacrifice being a choice, and also the fact that you're a really private person. And even though I haven't been on the national stage in the same way that you have, the work that I've done in television and radio in Chicago used to make me very protective, not only of myself, but of my circle. And I always felt like I had to have, especially when I was younger, like it had to be this wall, you know, between things. And I appreciated your candor in talking about the choices that you've made as a woman, and how you feel about being a woman athlete. Because I think that there are a lot of women in business who feel like, or are made to feel like they've made sacrifices that they're not ashamed of, but then they wonder if they should be. So please dig into that, because that was one of those chapters that, I had to put the book to the side for a second. Take a breath, get up, walk around, and then come back.
Yeah. So, you know, I think the one thing that I wanted the book to also do is not just so much focus on the business side, but that you got to learn a little bit about me. And I'm known to be very private, very protective, very loyal. If you say something to me, nobody else is gonna hear it from me. But one of the things that occurred to me or happened to me that I experienced at a young age as a teenager is I had reproductive issues. And, you know, going through that at such a young age, you don't really understand it at the time, because I was an athlete and I was just trying to get back out there and say, you know, okay, let me heal up, let me go play, let me do whatever. And then as you start to mature and become of age in your mid-20s and dating and in serious relationships, you know, I realized that what happened to me, which was not my choice, that was God's choice as to what happened within my reproductive system, and you'll learn about it in the book. You know, it affected the relationships that I had that I was in going forward. Serious relationships where, you know, the guy couldn't deal with what I had experienced or what I was going through, and it was really about childbirth or bearing the ability to bear children. And so it affected me, but I kept, you know, chucking away with my head up and forging and I talk about sacrifices, but then they became choices. And I said, you know, if I want to survive and I've got to focus on what I can do for me, I can't worry about and rely on someone else taking care of me. If they don't want me for me alone and they need everything else to come with it, then that's not the right person for me. And so those are some of the choices that I had to make that I still deal with today. I mean, I'm beyond my childbearing years, but it's still an impact on certain people that you meet and men that I've been dating. And, you know, it's a choice that you have to make, but it also, I think, forms you of how you go into the workplace and where you spend your energy. So I turn that negative energy into positive energy into going out and working harder at my craft. And I continue to do that today.
And it's an inspiration. And again, affirmation and confirmation, because same, sis, same. Like, and I know that there are a lot of other women who don't feel as comfortable talking about it because they're made to feel ashamed of it. So thank you for putting that in the book, because it's yet another perspective of womanhood that and it's getting easier for us to talk about it publicly, and we're doing it more, but it still has been one of those things where it's like, oh, I don't want to say that because it's just me. So thank you for that. Let's also talk about how your faith informs all of these things, because another powerful moment that we haven't talked about yet, but that I really did want to touch on was how you do, and you just mentioned God, how you do put faith first and it shows through your actions. Like I see it through the whole theme of the book and in a lot of the things that you've done. And you reference spirit, and you talk about believing your belief in God. Talk about how your faith informs your work and these situations you've been in.
Absolutely. I was raised in the church, and, God is my Lord and Savior, or Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I think when you have put your faith in a higher being, you are taking a lot of that pressure off of yourself. And you pray about things, or I pray about things of trying to make the right decision or putting me in the right places and guiding me in those right directions. And that's something that, my mom and dad, they were religiously in the church 5 days a week at some point when they retired, either volunteered in the church or Bible study or whatever that might be, trustee board and education board, et cetera. And that's just something that is instilled in me and that's my belief system. I don't really talk about it a lot, but it's about, it's not for others to know. I think they can sense it in me, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, but it's something that we all need to know, that we didn't get here alone, and that we need to lean on something much higher than us to guide us through this universe.
Yeah. And I think that that's the thing I appreciate, is that I see it in a lot of your interactions, even the funny stories, the ones that have me screaming in laughter. Because one of the things that I really liked was that food is a theme in the book. You tell so many stories about food in the book and how it was an expression of culture, or an expression of home away from home, or an expression of welcome when you became USTA chair and president, and how you used it. Talk about did you do that on purpose because food is important to you, or did it just kind of bubble up as a theme?
Girl, my mama's from Mississippi. And
Come
so
on.
it's all about opening the door and welcoming people in on Sunday or any day of the week. If somebody came by, it was food that fed the soul. And that's how I grew up. And I think, as I got into these positions where I was hosting dinners and hosting people, and it was really about making sure that their palate was satisfied and feeding them and having conversation over great food, which I love to do. And so that's just something, that's how I was raised, not just at my house, but anybody that I know. We go over each other's homes and eat. And, my girlfriends, that I won't mention any names, but they were mentioned earlier. Whenever I came home, they're like, "Hey, what's mom cooking?" So that's where we are. But it's a lot of those types of stories that you'll, are intertwined in and out of the book. Celebrity based, non-celebrity based, etc. But I'm just thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about Own the Arena with you in particular, and with everyone that's listening here this evening. I look forward to answering some of the questions.
Yes, absolutely. Can we pop in some questions into the Ask a Question box? If you have any for Kat, please put them in there, and we'll monitor them and get to them. I want to, while we're waiting for people to get that in there, you have one of your jobs as USTA president, to me, was being a doorman for the VIP lounge. And I just have to say that I'm glad you weren't working the door at any of the clubs I went to in the 90s, because sis, because y'all had a dress code, and among the list of people you had to ask to go put on some clothes were Al Roker, A-Rod, Seinfeld, and some random Argentinian model whose friend kept making a stink. And the fact that you kept it together during that whole thing, it made me laugh out loud, because I could picture you looking up, going, yeah, no.
It was a great experience being the president of the President's Suite. And, from year to year, decade to decade, the dress code has changed. There was a time that men had to wear a suit and jacket and tie, and it could be 100 degrees, and they're sitting outside with jacket and tie. Well, we got rid of the ties a long time ago. But one of the things that we felt that we didn't want to do was casualize it or make it too casual by wearing jeans and sneakers, et cetera. So we had a no jeans and no sneakers, although the sneakers got a little touchy because Allbirds came out and all the Cole Haan, all the shoes started to look like sneakers, and that was a lot more challenging. But wearing jeans was definitely a no-no. You could get away with the black jeans, but when you had on blue faded jeans or orange jeans, that just was not accepted. And so one of the situations was I was sitting courtside, and my suite staff was really having a challenge with a guest, and it was really for his guests who had jeans on, and he was trying to argue his case about, his jeans are $600. I said, well, that's your first mistake. You spend that kind of money on some jeans, and that's a problem. But we didn't let him in, and then he took it to Page 6 here in New York, and I'm like, seriously, dude, I don't really have time for that. Al Roker's son actually came in sneakers and some nice Bermuda shorts one day, and it was 90 degrees, but we had to ask them to leave. Mr. Seinfeld was another guest. We found him another suite to go in that night, and A-Rod was my favorite because he came as a guest of someone in very dark jeans. So no one's looking at the jeans because they're just looking up at A-Rod going. But he sat down across from me, and he had a cuff, and I'm like looking, going. So I had a conversation with him, and he politely left. But it's things change. I think the dress code would probably be a little more lax. But if you saw me every day, I was showing up at a tennis center at 9 a.m. in the morning or 8 a.m. in the morning, dressed after 5, because that was just the feeling that I wanted. I wanted to have that feeling. I wanted to represent that. On any given day, I was to go down on the court, and I always wanted to look the best and represent my culture.
Nice. I love it. And that's a theme in the book too. But I also know that comes from your mama, because you can't go outside with your hair not combed. You can't go outside looking ashy. And that's all there is to it. Now we got a question. I see your questions, Lauren. I'm gonna get to that in a second. We have a question from Melinda, who said she loves seeing you own the USTA. Do you have a few tips for women who seek to own their own arena? So if they're looking, I'm assuming, Melinda, you mean if they're looking for an arena to own.
Yeah, again, your arena is what you make of it. It could be your house if that's your arena, your own office space as your arena. It's a good play on words for me because I was in sport. But it's really about having your goals, accomplishing them, and having a plan to achieve them. And that is giving you all the stepping stones to owning your arena, whatever that space may be.
Yeah, all those different things. And the thing that's awesome, right at the beginning of the book, as I hold it open, she has her 12 match points, where she goes through all the different ways that you can own something. And I think it's a really good guide for saying, okay, how does this apply in my own life? And this was a question I was going to ask you to close with, but I think we can dive a little deeper into it now. And I don't know why Lauren's asking the question, because she knows you and she probably already knows what's coming next. But tell us about what's coming up for you in this next transition of your life, because this book, I think, marks a transition. What are the next 5 years looking like for you, and what are your goals?
Yeah, so right now, work-wise, I run the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program, which is a youth-based program here in New York, similar to a program that I grew up in Chicago. I've been the executive director for 15 years. So my life has been tennis. Everything I've done, every arena that I've worked in has really been tennis. I've been fortunate enough to start venturing out into some public and private sectors and joining some boards and being on some advisory boards and learning more about other industries. So that is also piquing my interest outside of tennis and giving me tools that I think will be necessary to take a next leap of faith, if you will. So, the next few years, I find myself being a leader again somewhere, hopefully in the sports industry, because that's where I'm truly passionate about. I feel that I have a lot to offer, to whoever the customers are in that space, but to continue to build relationships that are going to make me better than
I love it. I love it. And one of the what are the industries that you are finding interesting? Because there's so many new ones now, and especially with COVID. And I'll get to the COVID part of the question in a second. But what are some of the interesting industries that you that are piquing your interest right now?
Well, I'm learning a lot more about the finance, the finance world. A couple of the boards that I sit on, I'm on a SPAC board, and so that's really got my head spinning with a lot of numbers and understanding what that means as far as transitions, mergers and acquisitions, et cetera. And so that's something that's definitely piquing my interest. But I'm an athlete, so there are a lot of other sports that I'm interested in that I actually play. I'm a huge golfer, love playing golf, and avid golfer. Obviously tennis, but I love every sport that's out there. And I think it's really, whatever comes up that I feel that I can give my best self to, that can help that company grow or that organization, whatever it may be, then that's where I am. But right now it's really trying to elevate Harlem Junior Tennis. It's really about donors and grants, and bringing in those funds so that I can serve my youth in my programs and give them the best opportunity to be their best selves and earn a college scholarship and use the tools that they learn in tennis like I have to go out into the professional world.
I loved reading about Justin in the book, one of the students, one of the young men who went through the tennis club. And I love that we can see the fruits of your work and the continuum of the things that you've done. Now, when it comes to the book, how has COVID impacted? Because the COVID actually delayed the release of the book. Are you planning to still do a book tour, even though you're doing these virtual events now? Will people be able to meet you at some point in time when outside opens up again?
Well, hopefully that's the case. I actually have a book signing in Chicago, March 20th at XS Tennis Village. It's a link on my webpage and on Facebook, etc. My webpage, katrinaadams.com, to sign up for that. I'm really trying to honor CDC protocols and the limited amount of people that can gather. But if there's anyone that's on this viewing that wants to host a such event, please let me know. I am willing to travel around the country, but I have to make sure it's worthwhile and I can do a couple of different things in each city and in a safe environment. So it has impacted it because I'm not on the road. We're sitting here doing this. But I think we're also able to reach a lot more people here in this venue as well, thanks to Barbara's Bookstore.
Great. We have a comment from Andrea. I hope I'm saying your name. Is it Andrea Guidry or Andrea Guidry, who says, no question, just wanted you to know how immensely proud I am of you. And I did see a comment. Wait, what's that?
She's my niece. Thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. And then I need to put on my glasses for this because that print is pretty small. Margaret says, thank you for being a DEI leader and imparting to others how critical it is to have a seat at the table. As women of color, it is important for us to be in the room where it happens and be part of the decision-making process. We are inspired by your story. And your brother said, oh, both of you are over the top, phenomenally fabulous. People are cheering. I'm loving this.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for all who have tuned in tonight. And maybe this recording will be able to share it again because I know timing is everything for people these days who are at home. But I know that you've taken time out of your day to tune in to listen to this conversation. Own the Arena, I think, is a stepping stone, not just for me, but for all of those that read it, because I think you will find yourself in many areas of the book, things that will resonate with you and things that maybe even make you go, thinking about how that implies to you or what you can take away from it that's going to make yourself, advance. So it's like I'm never at a loss for words, but I can say the attention that I've got in the last week, and I'm used to being getting attention. I'm used to being in the spotlight, but it has been amazing. And hopefully it's an opportunity for me to continue to grow and really be able to take those next leaps of faith into whatever that might be.
I have no doubt that you will be able to, even though your last comment did kind of address this. One of the things that I would like to close with are your hopes for what happens to people when they read the book.
Yeah, you know, I hope that people read this book and realize that, you know, you have the power to own your destiny by how you live your life and by how the choices that you make based on the people that surround you. A lot of times we have what it takes, but we don't surround ourselves with the right people who may be actually holding us back or pulling us back because they don't have the ability to move forward. So it's an opportunity for each of you, each of us, to reflect on where we've come from, where we are, and where we want to go. Because the possibilities are infinite if we put our hearts and soul to it and do the research. You know, we have this tool at our fingertips to just hit Google and find out whatever it is that we want, and get the education and the information that we need to be our best selves. And that's something that, you know, I think the book kind of resonates in a lot of those areas. And not only owning your losses, but owning your successes. Be proud of what you've accomplished and know that those successes can help take you to that next level. But it's really the last one of owning your possibilities, because it's infinite as to what those can be if we allow ourselves to.
I love that way to end. Thank you so much, Katrina, for writing the book, being so transparent, and speaking into existence and pouring into us what you've learned. I appreciate it. It's an ultimate act of generosity. Thank you to everyone who came in to this event tonight. We appreciate your contributions and your energy. If you are interested in purchasing a book, again, you click on the little green link for the 10% off. Thank you to Barbara's Bookstores for making this possible tonight. Also in the chat, look for the links to both the recording of tonight's conversation. It is basically the same link that you use to get into the room. And again, have to put on the spectacles. There is also a link that Lori put into the chat for where you can find Kat at different signings. So you can copy all these links, and we hope to see you in person at some point in time soon. Thanks again. Oh, and remember to support your independent bookstores. They are awesome, and Barbara's Bookstores is one of them. Thank you so much, Kat. Congratulations on everything. Cannot wait to see what you do next. And to all our NU people in the audience, good night, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.